Hello, welcome. My name is Stephen Stewart, and I'm here today with Live Reality Games to talk more about Survivor British Columbia, Season 6, Rockrain Valley. We just had Episode 6, the Merge episode, and I'm here today to talk all about it. Now, I was supposed to have a guest today, Jamie Lafrance from Season 8, but unfortunately he has COVID, so he will not be here joining, but I have a probably even more important guest who I'm going to bring on right now. I have the one, the only, the Lexi. Lexi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, much better than I was like 2.5 years ago. So,
I mean, so you were voted out this episode. I mean, what was that reaction? What was that feeling walking out of tribal council? Because I remember you and I and Lori were the only ones who were in Ponderosa. You were pretty mad.
yeah, I think I was mostly frustrated because in my mind there was this very clear, obvious, straightforward strategy. We had numbers going into the merge. I was very loyal to Ula Ula. I was like, this seems pretty straightforward. There's no reason that anyone from Ula Ula should be going home now or in the next three tribals. So when I went home, it was like I tried so hard to make something happen that was going to be in the best interest of the six people that I cared the most about in the game, and it did not work. So yeah, I was really frustrated because I think everything I was saying was true. I mean, not in terms of like gameplay, what I was saying to people, but like
You
the
were going to
general
vote out Lindsay anyways?
no, absolutely not. Never. But yeah, I was like, it was a really great strategy, I thought. And I think the problem is I just didn't execute properly. So then I was done.
Well, we mentioned a little bit earlier. What's it like rewatching or really kind of living the experience of Survivor BC, which was 2019 pre-COVID? Like it felt like a whole other age.
Yeah, it's a whole different world. It's weird traveling back in time like that. It's like definitely cringy watching the episodes, just like in terms of like watching myself back. But I think like watching back just the gameplay in general, I remember having a great time. So it's bringing up a lot of good memories for me. And I think it's fun to watch things play out. There are like bits and pieces that I didn't know or didn't get to see in when it was happening live. So it's been
What's
fun.
what surprised you the most? Like what have you seen? You're like, oh, I didn't know that was happening, or maybe I hadn't seen that side of things.
Ooh, I mean, having just come off of the merge episode, I know I mentioned this to you before, but just like I didn't realize how negatively I was perceived by some of the members of my tribe. And I guess even like like at tribe swap, I thought that like my game pre-swap was pretty solid. So it was surprising to see that there were people even at that point that were like, I don't know about Lexi. Did not see that coming.
Well, let's kind of get in. So one thing I'd like to talk about is we didn't see a lot of you in your swap tribe, Ula Ula 2.0. Part of that, and I think part of it's definitely the winner's curse, right? The joy of losing is you get more screen time as people watch you get voted out. Talk to me about your thoughts on the swap and your swap tribe and what you're trying to do then.
Yeah. So I was really excited. It was like right before the swap. I did not care about Aleem at all for the first like two rounds of the game. I was like, meh, whatever. Like he's Noah's friend. He can go anytime. And then there was like one round when we did the questions, we had to answer questions about the other tribe. At some point in that round, we just kind of clicked and I was like, okay, I think I actually could work with this person. So I was really excited that Aleem was on my tribe. Looking back now, it's like I did not like I watched so much Survivor and I still didn't know how to handle a tribe swap apparently because like I put no effort, zero effort into talking with Rachel or Taylor or Tony. I was like, you guys are the enemy. I'm not going to talk to you. I didn't even try with Kristen and she was on my old tribe and I knew that if we lost like she would be most likely to flip in my opinion and I still didn't try to like keep her in my good graces. I was just like no, like I'm going to talk to Aleem about strategy, even though that's 2 out of 6, and that could be problematic. So I think like tribe swap is probably for me when like my strategy just kind of failed completely. Like my strategic game went out the window, and I was like, also in my defense, I started to get a cold right around that time, and it just like progressively got worse. So I was like brain fog, and it just like steadily up to merge was just like getting worse and worse and worse. Like I don't know if you remember after I got voted out, we went to the house and I was like so out of it. And I'm pretty sure that y'all had like saved the master bedroom for me with like an ensuite bathroom. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go in here, and I'll see you all tomorrow. It was like 6 p.m. or something. I was dead. It was awful. So that probably didn't help either. But yeah, tribe swap. I was not super pumped about. Obviously, I would have wanted to be with David. He was my tightest ally at that point, and that didn't happen, which I kind of figured was intentional because I don't think it was a secret that we were really close. But I think I could have definitely done more with the tribe swap than I did to set myself up for the merge. In retrospect.
Now, would that have been like just making sure you talk to Kristen so she feels more receptive, or is that like scheming and strategizing with the baton members so they feel like there's someone you can pull in or work with or have a more working relationship with?
I think both. And it's hard to know how things would have played out. But I think one of the things that I've learned since Survivor BC is it's the best thing you can do for yourself is keep your options as open as possible. So if I had continued to talk to Kristen and tried to pull Kristen and Aleem aside and say like, hey, listen, things are looking good. Like they're getting rid of Batohan on the other tribe. If we can just stay strong, like we'll have numbers going into the merge. Those are conversations that I had with Aleem. Those are not conversations that I had with Kristen. And if I would have sat down, I mean, I kind of got to know Rachel and Taylor and Tony, but if I would have sat down with them and just said like, what are your thoughts? Like, how are you feeling about this? Like, I'm open. If I had communicated that at all, I maybe would have had more luck, especially when we get into like what happened at the merge. Like what I did at the merge made no sense based on how I handled the tribe swap, but I did it anyway. So I think if I would have like done more interacting with the other tribe, what happened at the merge might have gone a lot differently.
Well, so you're going the merge. You have a number 6 Ula Ula, 4 Batahan. And you mentioned before, like you're kind of at this point thinking like Ula Ula is strong, at least initially, right? Let's take the upper hand when we have it before. I don't know if you're thinking like Ula Ula to the end or like who that's going to be, but of the Baton, what's your hit list? Like what's that? Which ones do you think are the most threatening to your game?
So I think we kind of got to see this in the episode. Rachel would have been top of my list. I knew she was a threat to win. Obviously, like she was a great competitive beast. She was pretty strategic. Everyone seemed to like her. Like I was like, Rachel needs to go. I also thought she had an idol. So in terms of hit list, I was like, we need to not vote for Rachel the first round because she's going to play an idol and one of us is going to go home. So I was pitching Keegan because I thought his social game was pretty strong too, which also it's like so many things in retrospect I maybe would change up because looking at it now, like Keegan was probably someone that I would have wanted to work with. But I didn't. I was like, no, he needs to go because I like him. So everyone else probably likes him too. So we should just get him. So probably like if I had it my way, we would have done Keegan and Rachel would have either played her idol incorrectly or she would have held on to it. Then we would have had the numbers to do a 3-3 split in the next round, get rid of Rachel. Then it would have been Taylor and Tony left. And at that point, either we get rid of Taylor and Tony, or maybe it's an opportunity to try to work with Taylor and Tony. But I think probably Rachel and Keegan would have been my number 1 and 2 for sure.
Well, when we start the episode, right, we bring the tribes out. We learn that you emerge. You're grabbing your new buffs, which are a beautiful purple color. Something we don't see in the episode is that Stacy, I believe, finds an extra vote in her buff. Is that something that you knew about at the time? Was that?
No, I had no idea. Yeah. I didn't find out until afterward.
Because, an extra vote could have, I don't think that allows you to split the votes per se, but who knows? I don't think so.
Because we would have had 7. We could have done, well, no,
4, 3, 4? Yeah.
That doesn't really work.
If you knew that you were able to get one of the minority to flip out, maybe. Who knows? So it probably would have made a huge difference, but this is when you learn that you can compete or you can eat, and everyone chooses to compete. Was there ever a doubt in your mind that you were going to compete?
Well, I don't think that they actually told us that it was a choice. I'm pretty sure what happened, based on what I remember, is the way that they phrased things, it sounded like there was like a little bit of a choice, but they just said, you're all going to compete. Once your cup drops, then you start eating. They didn't explicitly tell us that once the challenge was over, the merge feast was over. So I was like, I'm going to try my best in the challenge. And then once I'm done, it's merge feast. And then eventually we leave. I did not realize that I was on a time crunch.
I mean, so you were like, you dropped in the middle, right? I think you were like, you came in 5th place. Because I think at that point, Kristen, Tony, Aleem, and Stacy, all drop before you. And then you drop. And so I think you had a fair amount of time to eat, though, like at least 10 minutes, maybe?
Yeah. If I recall correctly, I was like content with the amount of food I had consumed before the challenge was even done. I was like, all right, I'm full, I'm good.
I mean, one of my favorite parts of the episode was you, like, I forget, like, it was a Taylor or Keegan gets, Lindsay steps down.
Lindsay.
And you give her exact instructions, like, you should eat this and this and this, and spaghetti is good, hot dogs a little less so, get the juice. You lay out the game plan for how she should approach the merge feast.
Yeah, which is kind of ironic given like the reasons that people weren't super happy with me with how things went down with the merge. But if I'm good at anything, it's food reviews. So I was like, she asked and I was like, I'm ready. I have an answer to this question.
Well, while you're eating with other people who's in the challenge, is there any strategy discussion, or is it more like for you? Is it more meet and greet with Keegan, or more reuniting with David, Lindsay, and Stacy?
Yeah, I think it was interesting because, I mean, that was a fun group of people, regardless of tribal lines. Mm-hmm. So definitely no strategy, but I think we were just kind of getting to know each other, and it felt to me pretty lighthearted. Like, I wanted people to like me. I wanted to get to know some of the people that I hadn't had a chance to talk to yet, which was mostly, I guess, Keegan at that point. But yeah, I don't think that there was much conversation aside from just like jokes about food and like what was happening at the time.
So we end up in this head-to-head match where it's finally down to Rachel and David, and they're going to race over to the mat where the mute idol is. First one there wins, as long as they don't drop the cup of Jelly Bellies off their head. Now, in retrospect, do you think you got unlucky that David won? Because let me put it this way. Had Rachel won immunity, I don't think, to my knowledge, she hadn't told anyone about her idol, and she seemed very dead set playing it at the first tribal council. So she would have held on to her idol. You would probably voted Keegan or Taylor out, and there would have been, there could have been no issue with that, right? And then you're sitting pretty on a 6-3 majority at Final 9.
I wonder what would have happened, because my understanding of how things went down is, so I went in, my first conversation was with David and Aleem about strategy. And that's when, you kind of got I think a brief window into that my mindset, which was like, we shouldn't be voting for Rachel. Cause I think David came in and he was like, we should just vote for Rachel. And I was like, no, we should not, because she probably has an idol. She'll idol one of us out. But then that's when we said, why don't we just do Keegan then? He's probably the next biggest threat from that tribe. So then after the three of us finished our conversation, we kind of said, let's go around to the rest of Ula Ula and just touch base with them, let them know what our idea is, get their plan, and then kind of go from there. And so then I kind of bounced around to everyone and just said, here's probably, if you ask different people, you would hear different responses about how those conversations happened.
Oh, this is your story and you're on the podcast. So you're giving us the definitive look of how the merge went down.
I have so much power. Wow. Okay, so here are the facts about what happened. I went around and I said, here's an idea. Let me know what you think. I probably honestly didn't say that. I probably was like, here's the plan, and expected there to be feedback if people had feedback to give. In retrospect, probably should have asked more questions about what people were thinking. But it felt like there was a time crunch. Like, we got told, you don't have the night to get to know each other. You have hours to make a plan. So I was like, we have a limited amount of time. Let's just get the business done and move on with our lives. So my plan and David's plan and Aleem's plan initially was to just vote for Keegan. 6-4, super easy, very straightforward. Except for it wasn't, because then Aleem also had this plan where we could just, Aleem and I could pretend that we wanted to flip, and then we would get more information about them. I think we were worried that Rachel might play her idol for Keegan or something.
Yeah.
So we were like, if we just pretend that we want to flip, they'll give us information and then we can correctly vote and make sure that they don't play their idol.
Question. So what made people convinced that Rachel had the idol?
I think it was because when we got the idol clue at our camp, and immediately everyone started looking. Like, there was no question. It was like, all right, it's like 3v3, let's go. And we looked around. Aleem didn't find anything. I didn't find anything. Kristen didn't tell us that she found anything. And I think that if any of the three of us had found something, we probably would have shared it with the other ones. And of the other three, I mean, it could have been Taylor. I don't remember if there was any other indicator. I think it was just, it seemed pretty likely that if there was a 1 in 6 chance, and really a 1 in 3 chance, because we figured it wasn't me, Aleem, or Kristen, then it was most likely Rachel who had found it.
Gotcha. So it's just like thinking like most likely she ended up with it after the scramble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we didn't want to get screwed by an idol. The plan that we came up with was way too complicated. In retrospect, I wish that we would have just sat down with the 6 original Ula Ula, like circled up, which is what the original Batohan did. Like the 4 of them circled up. They talked to each other. They said, we are in the minority. What do we do? Meanwhile, Ula Ula is like in groups of 2 and 3 and 1 at some points. Like, I don't know what we were doing or thinking. It was a mess. And so then like plans kept like forming and changing. I don't know why. Like we could easily have come up with a great plan with the 6 of us that didn't need to involve me and Aleem pretending to flip. And again, why would anyone believe that I want to flip when I didn't even talk to the original Batohan at all during the swap? Like that's not even a plausible strategy for me.
Because what's interesting, I'm looking back at my notes of all the scenes, there's only 2 times we see only Ula Ula original together. It's that first initial conversation with you, David, and Aleem, and then it's when you're on the log with Lindsay and I'm trying to forget and Kristen. No, I'm trying to search her name. I took notes. So like. But it's like there was like very few times that you all were like together alone. Otherwise, you were always with other people. I felt like from the Batohan tribe. And so I get what you mean. Like you didn't ever have time to really huddle up and kind of say, "Here's our like we're voting Keegan. The decoy is Lindsay, and that's what we're gonna do."
Yeah. So going back to your original question of if Rachel had won immunity, would things have played out differently? My understanding is that David had to really push for them not to just do a straight vote on me. Stacey really wanted me out. She was ready to just put my name down. And I think she had Lindsay and Kristen convinced, and they would have had a majority on me. So I think the only reason that they voted for Rachel is because David said, Rachel might have an idol, just vote for her. Either we get Rachel out or we flush her idol. And it was the best chance at keeping me in the game, even though it was like slim to none.
Yeah, because my understanding of the time, and you were kind of a sacrificial lamb in a way, right? Either we win out, Rachel's gone, or she plays her idol, and if Lexi goes, a lot of players were okay with that happening, right? They were okay with you getting the collateral damage. And I think you realize, like we see in your final confession, you're like, I think it's Rachel or it's me tonight. You kind of realize like this is problematic.
Yeah, but at that point, there wasn't much I could do. I probably could have caused a little bit more uproar at Tribal. I was pretty quiet, but I don't know what I would have said to change anyone's mind.
Now, so I understand where Chris is coming from, being like, I don't feel great about Lexi and Aleem, right? Because I just spent all this time on a swap tribe with them. They're not strategizing with me. We see a lot of Kristen being really wooed by Taylor and Rachel. So why was Stacey feeling that like you need to go?
Stephen, I don't know. I have no idea. And I would love to know because I remember, I don't remember when I saw this, but at some point I remember Stacey saying that like I was acting really sketchy, I think during the Chris vote, and like I wouldn't make eye contact or something. I don't remember why I would have been sketchy or what I would have been thinking. I have no idea. I know that my best guess is I think that there were a lot of people who wanted to work with David. And David and I were pretty tight from the beginning. And I think maybe what people were thinking, among many things, because it's a complicated game, but I think part of it was if they get me out, then David's in the market for new allies. Like it was, my perspective was like me, David, and Aleem, if we could stick with Ula Ula for the first couple votes, like we would have been in a great position in the game. We would have stuck together. I would not have taken David to the end, but I would have had the option of Aleem. It would have been great. So I kind of think maybe Stacey wanted to just open up kind of the market for David. I also think one of kind of my misperceptions of the game is I forgot that like not everyone thinks like me. So when we were in a time crunch and we're trying to just like make a decision and then like move forward with our game, in my mind, it's like, all right, let's have a plan. If the plan is logical, people will get that and they'll be good with it. And then we'll move forward. So when I'm going around saying, hey, we're going to vote for Keegan because Rachel might have an idol. We're going to stay Ula Ula strong. It's straightforward. I expect that everyone's going to be like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Okay.
I mean, I'd be receptive to that. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds good to me.
Right. But some people don't like being told what to do. And it's understandable that people probably want to feel like their opinions being taken into consideration. So if someone comes up to you and they say, here's what we're going to do, if you already kind of have a bad taste in your mouth about that person, you're probably going to be like, are we? Or maybe I don't want to work with you. So I'm going to go around and tell every other person that I talk to that we should just get you out.
Because I think what we see a lot from Stacy is really telling people like, I think when like towards the end she's talking to TSL, she's like, I think Alexi's acting like she runs the show, right? Like, and you see Stacy really proliferating this. And I think a little bit it comes up with like the Chris vote, but really I think it seems like it must be it's coming out from this vote and how you're presenting yourself that she's like, I'm not down for that.
What's really funny to me is that, so I was having conversations with David and Aleem, and I guess it was my idea to vote for Keegan. But Aleem had this whole elaborate plan. I thought that I was kind of being a messenger. So like David had told me things, Aleem had told me things. I was like, I want to make sure that I'm communicating with the rest of Ula Ula because I want to make sure we're all on the same page. But I think that the way that I communicated that made it sound like these were all my ideas and not like there was any sort of collaboration. So I feel like David and Aleem David and Aleem got off pretty like, I don't know, like no heat fell on them, I guess it seemed like there was a little bit of heat with Aleem because he was associated with me, and David had heat because he's David and like everyone knew that he was like a challenge god already. So like
he just exudes this aura of challenge threat.
But like because that wasn't because of the plan or like the strategic elements of the merge. All of that seemed to fall on me, even though in my mind like there was this like 3-person collaboration that happened. And I think I probably just accidentally took credit for things that I shouldn't have taken credit for because it did not make me look good.
Well, one of the fun things of this episode, I don't think it really comes out into the confessional, is that a lot of information is being leaked constantly. Right. And I don't think it was you're the person running something, but I get a sense that Stacy, Kristen, and maybe Lindsay to an extent were more open with like kind of passing information, or maybe even Lima, I can't tell, but there was a lot of channels of information going to Baton. So you make a strategy, Baton hears, they confront you. You change strategy, Baton hears, like they confront you. Was there a lot of that going on within the couple hours?
Yes, and it was going both ways. And again, this is because of our stupid plan to like, for me and Aleem to kind of be moles. It was also going back to Ula Ula from Batohan. So you heard a lot of people talk about how Lindsay was like the throwaway vote. I think when we initially said that, we didn't really think about the fact that they might go back and be like, oh, you're like, everyone's saying to vote for Lindsay. Like, why would anyone tell Ula Ula that we're going to vote for Lindsay if they don't think Ula Ula is going to vote for Lindsay? But like, I think it was like Taylor, Keegan, people who didn't necessarily trust me and Aleem going back and being like, hey, they're saying Lindsay. Well, now Lindsay's like, why are they saying my name? No one discussed this with me.
Why are you putting my name out there for them to vote for? Right.
Exactly. Which it's like all of these little pieces that it's like, if I could have dealt with that, if I would have sat down with Lindsay and said, hey, super sorry, that wasn't my idea. Never, ever was going to write your name down. Like, I would only have said that if I thought you would be safe. That might have helped sway her to vote for Keegan. Who knows? But I did not have that conversation with her or with anyone. It was like, there was so much. And I think that's it, is like, I've been beating myself up about this episode because like, there are so many things that I should have done differently, but also we did have a very limited amount of time and we kept having to go back and do damage control because things were getting leaked. So it was like, I would have loved to sit down and have conversations with people, but kept having people were coming up to me and being like, oh, you're voting this way. Wait, but you said you were voting this way. Wait, are you voting this way? Wait, why did you say this person's name? So then they're saying, oh, Lexi's saying 1,000 people's names. That was never my intention. I don't consider myself a messy player, but I think a lot of things got in my mouth and I kept trying to like do damage control on both sides. And so it ended up that like, it was just a complete mess.
So in an ideal world, like you would have had brought you wish you brought the six of you together and you just kind of hash things out from the get-go and say, no matter what happens, let's stick with this and let's reconvene at the end just to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah. Or honestly, like, wasn't it like a Boston Rob strategy to just like
The
not
buddy
let people
system?
go off alone? Seriously? Like, I wish I had
That would
been
have been
smart.
amazing if you pulled that off.
Seriously. I mean, not even the buddy system, but just like, you know what? Let's sit down as Ula Ula. We're 6 strong. What do we have? Like 2 hours? All right. Like, why do we need to talk to Batohan? They don't need to know anything. Oh, you want to go talk to Batohan? Why? Why do you feel the need to talk to them?
Now there's kind of the jury. Now that kind of opens up a jury management issue, right? How much do you think that would tick off the Baton? And if they play that out successfully, they are definitely aiming for you at that place. Because they're like, we need to take out Boston Lexi.
But Steven, at least I would have made the jury. Like, I got nothing. That was the most devastating thing to me. I went into that game and I was like, I know it's hard to win. I just want to make the jury. Then we made merge and I was like, awesome, I made jury because that's what I thought that meant. That is not what that meant. So sad.
Hey, we had a great time at Ponderosa in the pre-jury house. I can say that much though.
That's true. Got some great book recommendations. So who's the real winner?
So looking back at when you were watching the episode and watching everyone scrambling around and strategizing, did anything surprise you, or like you hadn't realized people were having these conversations or that there were these relationships that were coming up?
I think there were some things that I was just starting to realize. I went into Survivor BC about as fresh as you can be. Like, I didn't know that live reality games were a thing. I didn't know about orgs. I knew nothing. And there's this whole like deeply connected community. And I found out about Survivor BC from a Reddit post that I just happened to see. Like, I knew nothing. And so it didn't even cross my mind that people might have played these games before or played them with other people or like knew of people because they're like low-key famous in the community, like TSL. Like, I knew nothing. And so like it finally, toward the end of the merge, and it was like way too late to do anything about it, it started to click with me like, oh, some of these people know each other and those relationships might be influencing some of the decisions that are being made.
It was weird for me because I didn't know any of the other relationships, but from watching episodes, Rachel and my relationship is on full display. Everyone's like, oh, Steven and Rachel, they know each other. This is such a problem. Like, I had never really talked with Rachel ever before Survivor BC, which was very funny. And so it was interesting to see, like, because you have Keegan and Aleem have a connection from Pacific Northwest. You know, Stacy has years of experience. She's not being forthright about whatsoever. I'm trying to think of at this point what other relationships. I mean, Kevin and David had played with each other, but that relationship was gone at this point. Lindsay and Kevin had known each other, but that relationship was gone at this point. TSL and Tony had both played with each other, and so that's why they were working closely, because they were able to build based off that. So there was a lot of these smaller or sometimes major connections influencing things in the background.
Yeah, super interesting. And I still don't know, like, to what extent, like, if Kristen and TSL had never spoken before ever in their lives, like, would they have been as open to working with each other as they were? Like, I don't know, maybe, but who can say? There were a lot of other things that were happening too. I don't think it was a decision that was exclusively made based on pre-existing relationships, but yeah, I had no idea.
So let me think. If you had been successful, and let's say you voted out Keegan, and then at the final 9, you would have had then vote split on Rachel. You would split on her and TSL most likely.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, and you have voted Rachel on the revote. At the final 8, would you have gone all in on Ulu and stay with them, or would you have, if you had the blindside someone in your tribe, who would have been the people you thought was most disposable, or like people I need to get out of my way to reach the end game?
So I think the funniest thing, and the thing that I kept thinking about right after I got voted out, is in my mind, when I was thinking about endgame, I was thinking, like, who would I go to the end with? And it was always people from Ula Ula. I think I probably would have wanted to get rid of all of original Batohan and then just worked from the inside. I had no intentions of taking David to the end because he would have beat all of us. I think in my mind, I would have wanted to kind of switch gears at final 6, and I think I probably would have been loyal to Aleem at that point, which would have like complicated things, because my original plan was like just like talk to Stacy, Kristen, Lindsay. Let's get a 4-2 majority and get rid of David and Aleem. And then like I would be happy to go to the end with Lindsay or Kristen or Stacy, and we could have just kind of duked it out after final 4. And I don't know, I mean, like so much would have happened in between. Like I would have been open to any of those possibilities within that Ula. But I think probably at 6, like as much as I love David, I probably would have flipped the target on him pretty quickly, because like he had a very real possibility of just winning out at some point. So like you have to take the shot when you can.
That's interesting. So looking back towards the Chris vote, because I feel like some of the things with Stacy like kind of came up for the Chris vote, because you played a very pivotal role in helping push the vote on Chris instead of Aleem, right? Do you think that's something that you should have changed and not done, or approached it differently?
I mean, in retrospect, like I'm so glad that we voted out Chris, because the alternative would have been Aleem, and like so many things in the game and like in my personal life would look very different if we would have
spoilers, Lexi and Aleem are currently dating.
However, I think that vote to me felt so necessary, because I had this perception that David and I were a tight duo and Lindsay and Chris were a tight duo. And if we didn't take the shot at Chris and Lindsay first, then they were going to take a shot at us. So I was like, let's just get rid of Chris. In hindsight, especially watching like Chris's confessionals, I don't think that was as like necessary of a move as I thought it was. So I think probably game-wise, it might have been more helpful to me to like try to loop Chris in and like save him and just let Aleem go. But I have no regrets about voting Chris out. So.
and honestly, Aleem was a good ally for you, right? Aleem was probably a correct choice, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a different way to approach it that didn't leave some players like, Lexi, she seems to be like, she thinks she's running the show.
I just talk too much. That's the problem, because again, that was a decision that David also felt very strongly about. Like he might have even said it to me before I said it to him that we should do Chris. I was just like, yeah, you know what? I feel the same way. But David didn't get the heat for that. I got the heat for that. Why didn't I just keep my mouth shut? I don't know.
So if you could time travel back to yourself in 2019, you're playing Survivor BC and you just made merge, right? Would you still have the same strategy of Ula strong and figure it out the final 6 onwards? Or knowing, no spoilers, of course, but knowing what you've seen in the episodes and everything, like, would you change anything majorly?
That's the funny thing is, I still think it would have been the best strategy. Even like, I mean, you saw in the merge episode that there were probably some people within definitely some people within Ula that at that point like would not have had any interest in working with me. But I think if I could do damage control, like if I would have handled those relationships differently, I think there's a very real possibility that I could have had great relationships with all of the original Ula, and I could have kept those doors open for myself to just make it to the end. Like I had this great plan in my head, just the execution was way off.
See, the problem is you should have stolen some coins too. That would have really helped to like endear yourself to everyone around you. I mean, because all I heard was like, yeah, there's all these stories people were telling, all these crazy things you did. I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Oh man, yeah. Well, I mean, didn't Keegan kind of like really lean into that though?
Efficiently bust me. So that's Keegan expertly and efficiently did what he had to do.
He did.
So, what can I say? I gave him ammunition. So you talked about how you're a huge fan of Survivor, and I feel like when you want. So my very first time playing Survivor, I got to the end and I got shut out, pretty much, and it was like kind of for me living my Survivor dream and nightmare, like playing a game and doing so well but losing at the end. And I feel like I learned a lot and changed a lot because of it. Did you feel like you changed or grew as a person as a result of your experience in Survivor BC?
Yeah, I think definitely. it's like you have this perception of yourself as a person, and then you're surrounded by people who have their own perceptions of you. But I think like when you're in your own community, like there's a certain level of shelter. Like no one's just gonna straight up be like, I don't like the way that you talked to me, so we are no longer friends. In Survivor, it's like a very I think harsh mirror at times. So you go into it and like, I mean, people usually aren't terrible, so it's not like people aren't necessarily always like cruel, but you do get, I think, some feedback about the way that you interact with other people and just like the way that you think and how it might be different from other people. So I think like at the end of that experience, I learned a lot about how to interact with people who don't think like me. I learned a lot about what perceptions I had of myself that might have been accurate and some that might not have been as accurate. And I think like for me, it was a really humbling experience. And I think for everyone who didn't win, it was probably a fairly humbling experience.
I can attest to that. Losing sucks, but you take away a lot from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think like I learned a lot about myself and like, yeah, just in terms of like gameplay too, just kind of realizing what strategies are effective and what ones aren't, and like thinking through like, what would I do differently? It's just like, maybe not like a human growth like aspect, but just like from like a strategic, like kind of fun aspect. Like it was really great to be able to go through that experience and be like, all right, like if I did it again, I could do it better, I think.
So how did your understanding of Survivor, the game, or Survivor, the show, change as a result of playing?
I think I just realized how important the social aspect of the game really is. Like I think I fell in love with Survivor because of like the strategic aspect and just like watching people like honestly like manipulate their way through a game. It's like really impressive.
My gosh, you are gonna be Boston Rob next time you play, aren't you?
He's not my favorite Survivor, just to be clear.
Who is your favorite Survivor?
From the US seasons exclusively.
I'll let you do both. First US only, then it will throw international in.
Okay.
Though I am behind on Survivor Australia, so don't spoil me.
Okay. I will not spoil you. But I've been watching a lot of Survivor Australia lately. My favorite US Survivor, man, I feel like I have a type, so it's hard to pick like the like kind of like awkward nerds are like my Survivor type 100%. So like Rockrain, Fishback, like even like Spencer to a certain extent. I used to say, just kind of ironically, that Eric Reichenbach was my favorite, just because like I thought he was hilarious to watch. But if I had to pick an actual favorite, it would probably be Cochrane. Australian Survivors, oh man, it's got to be Shawnee. Have you seen?
Oh, I love your choice so much. Anyone whose like luxury item is like sunglasses, like from home, wins a place in my heart. Like her, like Shawnee on All Stars and Shawnee on Champions vs. Contenders is just amazing content.
Yes, incredible. Yeah, and talk about social game. Like, I think she's a really good example of how far social game can get you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably one of the best highlights of social game I've ever seen is Shawnee and how she plays and what she does.
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to talk about the merge or your time in Survivor BC they haven't brought up?
Oh man. No, I guess I just want to be very clear that there was, as chaotic as that merge was, at the very start, there was like a very clear plan that could have been executed to perfection, and we could have had a very different result. I think there was just a lot of chaos that ensued between the start and the end that I didn't have that much control over. So it was like, I feel like it looks like I'm this like super chaotic player who is like trying to run things. That was not how I was trying to play the game. It might have accidentally been how I played the game at the merge, but that was not my intention.
One of the things I want to bring up before I forget is I love your clothing choices because you have, it's a mole jacket, right? So with the thumbprint on it that they're wearing in the game?
It's not, but it looks like it. It's
Yeah, it looked
actually
like
a
it.
tree trunk, but it looks like a thumbprint.
Okay.
I
Because I
know.
know then you also have the Rob as a podcast shirt later on too. I was like, man, Lexi's attire's on point for a Survivor game.
I know. I bought the shirt. Here's a confession. I bought the shirt right before I left for Survivor BC because I was like, oh, like this'll help me make some friends because like it'll be like a connecting point. And looking back, I've had a couple of people be like, why would you wear it? Like, doesn't that kind of make you look like a super fan? And like, isn't that something that most people would try to avoid? But I wasn't enough of a super fan to be like, oh, people shouldn't know how much I know about Survivor. Because I was like, I don't know that much about Survivor. Like, I'm not like it's not going to be an issue.
I mean, I will say, I think as soon as you play one of these live games, you are elevated to super fandom. No matter how much the real show you've seen, like it is a tier above itself to having played and try to put your money where your mouth is, right? It's one thing to be in your sofa and say, oh, I would do everything differently. I wouldn't give up in this endurance challenge. I would do all the things. But when you're out there in person, it's much harder.
Yeah, that's the fun part. It's like it's really easy to watch and think about all of the things that people should have done differently and how dumb they are for making the moves that they did. But going out and trying it for yourself is like, yeah, I am very grateful to have had the experience.
So I have a couple, actually one more question. I have rapid fire questions, but at the end of the day, were you there when production was doing their daily wrap up podcast and we had to do winner predictions? Because I remember who my winner prediction was at this point in the game. Do you remember yours?
I think that might have been the night that I like
went to bed at 6 o'clock.
Took the longest shower of my life and then cashed out. Yeah. So I don't remember. I know that I would have picked David, but I don't think I actually said that.
I remember saying I thought Lindsay would win at this point.
Really?
Yeah, because my prediction at this point was that Ula Ula would stick together, and I thought Lindsay was in a very good place in the Ula Ula 5.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah.
So we'll have to see what happens. Even though you and I already both know what happens, we just won't say a thing about it. Right. Now, I want to kind of wrap up with some just rapid fire questions about your game. Just kind of say the first answer that comes to your head.
Okay.
What's your highest moment in the game? Like the best moment for you?
Dragging Tony across the field. Also, not just the game; it's my highest life moment.
You have no idea how mad it was. I'm like, oh, it's Tony versus Lexi. He's a guy. We have this in the bag, right? And I'm watching you manhandle Tony. I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's my proudest moment. Yeah.
What's your favorite moment from camp life?
Oh man. I think it was the first or second night we were there. It was like when things still felt like summer camp. We hadn't had to vote anyone out. Or maybe we had voted out Noah, but it still felt like summer camp after we voted out Noah. Sorry. Oops. But we were playing like those stupid like camp games. So it was like, I can do this, but I can't do that. And like a bunch of other like just like brain teaser type things. And it was so much fun because it was just like a bunch of random people from who knows where who would never have met under any other circumstances, just like playing stupid camp games at who knows what time at night because we had no clocks. But it was a very sweet moment.
So we talked about the highest moment. What did you ever feel like you had a really low moment? What was the lowest moment of your experience in Survivor BC?
Ooh. Okay, this is a kind of a funny low moment, but it has plagued me. I have never forgotten that I did this. I got voted out. I've been terribly sick, awful cold for like 2 days now. I'm in a complete fog. I just got voted out and found out like 2 seconds before tribal that it was probably going to be me. And they do the like last confessional, like, how are you feeling? Who are you rooting for? And at that point, I wanted to tell everyone that I was rooting for my 2 closest allies, but I completely blanked on Aleem's name. And I am so grateful that somehow that footage got lost. But now I'm going to tell everyone who's watching this podcast that I said in front of a camera that I was rooting for David and Alam. I had been talking to this person exclusively. I hadn't talked to anyone else since the swap for like a full day and a half. We had known each other for like 3 days and never had any time apart. And I still couldn't get his name right.
I mean, when I play with Jara in surviving real put took me 3 days to remember his name. It was really bad. I was just like, how is this name giving me so much issue? And I had to have this whole like mnemonic to remember his name. It was awful. I never told him, but like at some reason, it just gave me the most trouble was just remembering his name. He was on my tribe. It was
oh
bad.
man, I'm glad I'm not alone. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. Who surprised you the most while you were out there?
I will stop saying Aleem for every answer, although I was very surprised by him because I completely wrote him off day one. But Rachel, honestly, I had interacted with her briefly at the beginning of the game, and I was like, meh, like, she doesn't seem that great. And then she comes out and she's like this challenge beast. She's hilarious. She's like able to make friends with anyone. And I was like, I did not see that coming during our brief conversation. Like, I was not expecting that level of gameplay. So I was really surprised by her. Yeah.
Who do you wish you worked with, but that now do you wish you worked with that you didn't at the
time? Definitely Lindsay and Kristen. I think like in my mind, I feel like it was always like on my checklist and I just never got around to it. Like I really had a great time. I connected with David right away. I loved working with Aleem, but like my long-term game plan always included Lindsay and Kristen. And I just didn't, I mean, also like I got separated from Lindsay at the swap, but like I don't have that excuse with Kristen. I just like never talked to them. And I think like things could have looked so much different if I would have just had more conversations with both of those people. But I didn't. And I like really liked Lindsay. We just like didn't talk that much.
Had Ula Ula 1.0, your first tribe, gone to a third tribal council, who would have gone home?
I would have pitched Stacy because she was just the last person on the list of like people I wanted to work with. Like, wasn't going to vote for David at that point. Actually, no, I wouldn't have voted for Aleem at that point. I did still want to work with Lindsay and Kristen down the road. So yeah, probably out of like process of elimination, it would have been Stacy.
Now, what was your favorite thing about Canada?
I mean, Vancouver is beautiful. Like I will never forget laying on our sleeping bags under the stars and like it's pitch black and you can just like, it's like the most peaceful experience. The big tall trees, everything's really green. Like I loved the scenery here, the mountains, like it was just beautiful.
And finally, how would you encapsulate your Survivor BSC experience, or what's your takeaway?
Oh man, it was wild. How do I encapsulate an experience that like in so many ways completely changed my life? I feel like it would take me like an entire like podcast episode on its own just to talk about like everything that this experience meant to me. But like, I think just like relationships that I would never have expected with people from all over the place. And just like, I learned so much about like who I am, how I interact with people. And then also just like how to do well at games. And I learned that a little too late, but yeah, as a whole, fantastic, wild experience, like absolutely wild, but it was incredible. Yeah.
Well, it's been several years since Survivor BC. What have you been up to since then?
Quite a few things, Stephen. I finished my MSW in May, moved out to Vancouver because I loved it so much. As we mentioned before, I started dating Aleem, and now I'm just like living in Vancouver, loving my life, getting to see those pretty trees every single day. It's great. I love it.
And would you play another Survivor game if you could?
I tell everyone no, but the answer is probably yes. At some point, I'll get the itch again, and I'll probably try to play. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing you play again. I think the first time is this magical experience. Then like you kind of walk here like, oh wow, I would do things really differently next time, and you can adjust so much after realizing how you act in those situations and like saying like, oh wow, like I've watched a show, I've seen swaps, and I did this. You're like,
right. Yeah, that's true. It's like I almost want to just one more shot to like take everything I've learned and do it better, and then I can like end my Survivor career happy. But we'll see.
Yeah, for me, I think I'll keep playing until I eventually win something. I think
Nice.
once I have that victory, well, even then you might be like, oh, but I want another. We'll see.
You're greedy.
Ooh, maybe. Lindsay, Lindsay. Oh gosh, forgive me, Lexi.
That happened a lot on Survivor.
Well, even from the other tribe, before like I had Lindsay on my tribe, and there's the two of you in the other tribe. I struggled to know which the two of you were which. Once I had Lindsay on my tribe and Lexi on your tribe, I'm like, okay, now I know the difference between the two of you. Do any last things you want to say or bring up or talk about?
I feel like the only thing I haven't said is just how grateful I am to the production of Survivor BC for making it happen. Because I think I think people who do these games know how much goes into them. But it really is like, again, something that I had no idea, like that people even like had the motivation to put together an entire Survivor game. And I'm just so grateful that people exist like Jaira and the entire production team of people who made it happen, so that I got to participate in it. It was really awesome.
Jaira, Cole, Trevor, Jack, Nolan, all the other people who I'm not mentioning right now, just thank you so much for helping make our season what it is, and Matt Raymer for editing it. It's been super fun having this podcast, finally giving you a chance to kind of talk about your game, because I've been doing all these like recap podcasts for all the past couple seasons, so now the chance to talk about our season. So I'm glad we got to hear your story, Lexi. Thank you so much for making time for this.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, and so I think that's all from us. Thank you everyone for tuning in. The next episodes for RBC should be coming out roughly next Sunday, and I'll be here again next week with hopefully the limited contestant and another former BC player. So get excited.
Cool.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.